Welcome to the July edition of Learning Now TV. Hopefully it's sunny wherever you are in the world, although it's raining here in Wales today. Nigel, I don't know how it is down under, seeing as you're on the other side of the world at the moment.
Freezing, Kate, is the answer. Freezing. But I must say, just seeing you and your happy smile has cheered me up enormously because I was on my own last month. So welcome back. And I'm very glad you're here. Very glad you're here.
I'm back in one place for a bit. So very, very happy to be so as well. So who have we got on the show?
We've got some good bits of material today. First of all, Martin Cousins, I'm talking to him about a new Microsoft report, talking about the growing role of AI in the workplace, how you manage that efficiently so it ends up boosting productivity and so on. Then Michelle Perry-Slater is talking to Melissa Cochrane in Australia, and she's talking to Melissa, who manages a small charity which empowers pharmacy managers to fight burnout. So it's all about well-being programs and how even small little companies can help big organizations with well-being and get them to think differently about stress and strains on people. And Rob Hubbard, he's continuing his mini-series on sustainability, and this time he's talking to Natalie Ainsworth, and they're talking about carbon literacy, something that I know you're pretty fluent in anyway. So it's about embedding climate action into culture, learning, and everyday decision making. And I think it's a really important topic to concentrate on. Yeah. And then back with Rob Clark, Rob's news bulletin, talking about what's going on, ins and outs of L&D in the UK and Europe. That's it. So enjoy the show.
Never a dull moment. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the part of Learning Now TV that everyone is on tenterhooks, because this is the time we reveal which research report we're going to be looking at. And we decided to be really radical this time. And we're going to talk about AI. No one else is doing that. So our unique slant, we're talking about AI. So which report, Martin? What are we going to talk about today?
Well, Nigel, we're talking about the Work Trend Index annual reports from Microsoft. So this is something that they do each year. And the kind of subtext to this is it's the kind of positioning line that goes with this year's research report, which is 2025, the year the frontier firm is born. Now, before we get into that, this bit of research is always a large bit of research. So it's survey data taken from 31,000 workers across 31 countries. And they use other LinkedIn labor market trend data and Microsoft 365, sort of what they call productivity signals. So I'm presuming that is, I think it's just basically data from users, anonymized data of how people are using 365. So they've done all that, and this year they framed the whole report around this idea of a frontier firm, which is basically an organization that is shaped or has at its heart AI, generative AI, basically. So it's and it's just kind of asking a lot of questions about what that, how business leaders and employees see that, and it kind of makes some recommendations about how AI and humans will work together in these frontier firms. So that's kind of the pitch of this bit of research.
Yes. So basically, Microsoft is saying we're largely at stage one, which is AI as a human, as an assistant to humans. So it's human plus AI does a bit of the work for you. Nothing particularly astonishing there. The next phase are these human agent teams, where you've got a human with agents, part of the team, doing work for the team as digital colleagues. And I came across a company that was onboarding digital assistants as I was speaking to them. So they were going through a process of ingesting all the company's data and policies and everything else so they could be good assistants. But Microsoft said that is only stage 2. Stage 3 is where you have human-led but agent-operated AI. Agentic AI takes over. So Martin, good, bad, you convinced, and are you optimistic or terrified? What's your reaction?
I like to be sort of impartial when we do our research reports. So I'll do my level best to stick with some of the data first before I tell you whether I'm, overjoyed or terrified. I think it's important to go back to why Microsoft thinks this is the way forward. Obviously, it's a tech company. Obviously, it's on a lot of desktops and devices. But it's also saying that there are problems that need to be solved with this technology. And in the research, it says, some of those reasons I think are worth just sharing quickly. 80% of the global workforce, employers and leaders, say they lack enough time or energy to do their work. 53% of leaders say productivity needs to increase, and 82% of leaders expect to use agents to meet the demand for more workforce capacity. So actually, a lot of this is framed around productivity and the fact that organizations and leaders want to see more productive workforce, and they see agents and agentic AI as one way of really accelerating that. Now,
it's a kind of liberation, Martin, isn't it? What they're saying is that we've got human beings just using all their energy on kind of grunt work, and it keeps them from innovation, high-value tasks. So this is the way of taking that and liberating people. So they see it very much in that positive stance. This is about liberating people to do much better work, much more exciting work than up until this point. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and I think, to add to that, so they also have a look at the way that work is the problem currently. So they say that on average, employees are interrupted 275 times a day by meetings, emails, or chat. And then also 60% of meetings are ad hoc and kind of called in the moment. So basically, it's a massively interrupted work day. I think a lot of people would recognize that. So I think the idea that we can improve our working routines, our workflows, I think I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I think the thing that I suppose that concerns me a lot is what you talked about. On the one point, you talk about high value work. So we're talking about AI taking away the kind of processy stuff that we spend a lot of time on. That's one thing. So what is that high value work? I think that's a good question to ask. The second thing is, in terms of the strategies for AI in the coming 12 to 18 months, 33% of business leaders are going to use it to reduce headcount. So I think we have to also be very honest about that, about the fact that it seems to me the promise at the moment for the workforce is you will be liberated, as you said, to do high value work, and AI can do the rest. My only question is, why then there looks like there'll be job losses as a result of that approach? And the second thing is, what exactly is the high value work? Because I think that part of the equation has to be spelt out to people. And I'm not so sure that lots of people in their jobs would say, I would be allowed to get on with the high value stuff, because we have structures and processes and systems that also don't allow for people to, be optimal in their work. I mean, and there's lots of research to show that. So I think it's very interesting using terms like liberating this, and I think we can definitely assume that what the research shows, and this isn't the only research report that shows that organizations are looking to make efficiencies. They are looking to cut costs and reduce headcount using AI. I mean, that's kind of written across all research. So I think we need to focus on the other part of the story, which is what work looks like and what are those new roles, because that's less clear still.
It's true. And what they say is that there's a quote in the report somewhere about mindset shift saying we've got to see this as not just technology helping, but a new team member who will be pulling their weight as a team member, a new kind of team member, but nevertheless a team member. So that is a big shift from a Google search box to meet my new team member, Mr. AI or Ms. AI. So now the issue is whether work expands, companies become more productive, lots of things work becomes more interesting, jobs evolve, or whether we just get rid of a whole bunch of people, take the profits and pass them back to shareholders. That is the issue. It's whether the competitive environment that we're in at the moment requires a different way of looking at the world and different kinds of organizations.
Yeah.
And I think the jury's out on whether that's your view is right or whether what I've expressed is right. So yeah, it's a provocative report, I think, because it toes a very strong line. And what you're saying is it is a line. It's not objective truth or anything like that.
Well, look, I'm not a naysayer. I'm very interested in new technologies, and but this one in particular it's interesting because it's so powerful. It's so widely adopted. It's accelerating so rapidly, and it's having a real impact on organizations already. So I think what I'm trying to suggest is that it's that emergent of the new thing. Maybe there's a lag in time between the efficiency stuff, which is always easier to do, and the emergence of the
transformation
new roles.
stuff.
Yeah. And I think, and we have to just be mindful of that. I think how organizations treat their people around that is really important right now, because it's, as an employee, you probably are thinking, yes, I need to be upskilled or upskill myself. I would like to shift with this technology. What does that look like for me? People might need a lot more help. And I think those strategies, they are talked about in this report. Upskilling is really important around AI. And that is the number one strategy that businesses are going to take for the year ahead. So I think all of that, how we manage people through it is going to be really important. And I would hope that it's not just going to be, efficiency first, then that's going to lead to job losses. And without employees or workers understanding the vision and where they fit in. So I think there's just, probably a lot of work to do there for organizations.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's true. And the interesting thing is they're talking about, well, the workforce has to be prepared and get upskilled in order to manage this. But surely the obvious thing is that if you introduce AI agents, members of staff, they can help with the upskilling. They can personally guide you and comment and make upskilling a thing of joy rather than a thing of despair. So you can solve the problem by confronting the problem, not by seeing them as two separate things. So I find that a little bit naive, really, that they see the development of AI on the one hand and the need to upskill, change people on the other, whereas the two things should be hand in hand. If you're serious about the integration of the AI agent within the workforce context, then that agent has to do a lot of the work in bringing the team forward. And you can say that's your responsibility, agent. Bring the team to the point where they need to be. And that should make that process much, much more enjoyable and more straightforward and more fit for purpose for the whole team. So yeah, I think it's provocative. I think that the course that they're charting of one-on-one to uh, basic beginnings of agentic AI through to the fully flowering agentic AI, where AI is in the team, part of the team, and doing a lot of the grunt work for the team, and that it's not one-on-one, so that the agent is working for the whole team, or the agents are working for the whole team, is a very interesting, and I think probably very likely course of action over the next year or two. So it's a good provocative report, I think, without having all of the answers, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also it's, Microsoft is such a widely adopted technology that I think just from the perspective of being a customer, it's worth reading their stuff, their research.
Completely agree.
And seeing
that's the way
what they're thinking. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely right. Okay, Martin, thank you for that. And we've put the link up on the screen. You can download it. It's free. It's a relatively short report. Everybody should read it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
I have a new book out, Creating Joy at Work, 501 plus ideas for how to create happy workplaces. Check out how to give people trust, make them feel good, and enable freedom within guidelines. Also, how to select managers who are good at managing, and how to celebrate mistakes. There's a PDF at happy.co.uk, or you can check it out on Amazon.
This time on Learning Now TV's section from the Charity Learning Consortium, I am speaking to yet another award winner. Now, this award is really important to all of you listening today. It really is, because we're speaking to Melissa Cochran, and she's from Pharmacist Support, all about well-being. Now, it doesn't matter if you're in the third sector or the public sector or the private sector, this is something that impacts all of us. So let's hear from Melissa all about what they did to support their pharmacists. Melissa, welcome to Learning Now TV. It's wonderful to have you here. Congratulations on your award from the Charity Learning Consortium. I'm keen to hear a little bit about who you are and what do you do, and your charity as well. It's a smaller charity that we haven't heard of, so tell us a little bit.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. So Pharmacist Support is a very small charity. I think at full capacity, we have 13 members of the team. So we do a lot of good work, and I think we punch above our weight, really. So we support pharmacists with all things related to well-being. That might be, for example, financial well-being, in terms of debt and benefit support or grants if people fall upon hard times. We provide information about, we have an information and inquiries service. We offer workshops to help pharmacists with their well-being. We offer counseling and peer support, specialist advice about maybe employment support, and we have an addiction support program to help pharmacists who find themselves in a situation where they're facing addiction.
So you do a lot for a very small team. What's your role in the team, Melissa?
I'm the Wellbeing Development Manager, so I oversee our volunteers, the volunteering aspect of the charity, the counseling and peer support offer, and I also write and deliver workshops. We have a podcast as well that's in my remit, so lots of interesting and fun stuff.
Excellent. So you're doing great work. And the story here really is about your wellbeing program. And I'm curious, how did you even know that you needed a wellbeing program?
So we do research every year jointly with the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, where we look at pharmacists' well-being. And we've noticed for several years, we've had consistently really worryingly high levels of risk of burnout in the pharmacy profession. So last year, for example, actually it was in the 2023 survey,
we saw that 86% of survey respondents were at high risk of burnout. And when you look at community pharmacy, it's even higher, it's 93%. And so those are shockingly high levels of burnout. And that really gave us a steer as to what we need to do as a charity to help support pharmacists.
It is really shocking research, but you've built that up over time in terms of you've got a really strong evidence base for what you needed to do. That helped you then point towards the solution. You knew that you needed to help. So another tick in the box there for evidence-based practice, something that I'm always banging on about here. And it's no wonder then that you won an award for this program because it's very practical. Do you want to talk us through a little bit of why well-being matters, why the evidence pointed towards a program? We'll hear more about that later, but why well-being matters? Why should everyone care about this?
Well, I mean, we should care about people just because they're people and we want everybody to be well. So there's that. I mean, there's just the human aspect of well-being. But in an organization, when you have people who are well, it's better for the organization too. You have less sickness leave, you have higher productivity. It's just better across the board when you have a well workplace. And that's not just physically well, that's mentally well as well. So we should all care about this. And what we realized is that we as a charity had been really good at supporting individuals in taking care of their own mental health and well-being. We had several workshops about that. We offered a lot of services like counseling and peer support to help individuals to look after their own well-being. But what we felt was missing was how the workplace could help individuals support well-being. And so we realized that burnout is, if you look at the WHO definition of burnout, it's an occupational phenomenon. So you cannot have burnout without a workplace. And therefore, the workplace really needs to be a part of the solution. You can't just leave it up to individuals to manage their own well-being. You have to have workplace practices in place that support well-being to help prevent these levels of burnout.
It's crazy to think that when you articulate it like that, I'd never really realized that burnout only happens at work. Because at home, you can't burn out because you just would stop. You would choose. You've got the autonomy. But at work, you don't necessarily have the autonomy. And I appreciate that your pharmacists are working in an incredibly pressurized environment. And did you find then that you need to get the senior leaders involved in this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because part of the problem that we were seeing is that people were, for one thing, maybe they weren't able to take breaks, or they felt they weren't able to take breaks. So we need people in senior positions to say, no, you need to take your break. It's important to take care of yourself and to model that, because if people don't see the leader doing it, they don't feel able to, because they get worried that maybe they're going to be seen as shirking work or not being as committed as other people. So there's a very important role for leaders to play in not only saying these things are important, but modeling them as well.
The leaders really are there to help people flourish because they wanted to help their organizations flourish, I suppose. And there's definitely a cost, isn't there, involved, but then there's also a cost of not doing the right thing. And what I feel you're describing is they should be doing the right thing by people. The environment that they're working in, often NHS-based, and we all know the story of the pressure that the NHS is under. So these are the things that you're helping with, which is just very noble and wonderful. Thank you. I wonder, what did you do? What was the sort of the program that won you the award? What did you talk about? What were the subject matters? What did you do in that program?
So we decided that we need to look at well-being from a workplace perspective. So what we're doing is we're taking people on a journey to understand it. So we first look at the important role that managers play in workplace well-being. And this is not just in structures like, making sure people take their holiday or take a rest break, but we also know that the relationship between the individual and their manager is one of the key relationships in the workplace, and that people tend to leave a workplace or suffer from very high stress because of the relationship with a manager. There's an axiom that people join companies but leave managers, and I think that's very true. So we really need to help managers to understand the importance that they play in burnout, and they have a real role in helping to prevent it. So a lot of people are promoted to a managerial position based on their own workplace proficiency, but not necessarily because they have these human soft skills that managers need. So we're helping people to learn what these soft skills are, what kind of communication techniques help, how to have difficult or what we call important conversations with people. And this can give managers the confidence, because we found that a lot of managers and leaders, they really want to do something about this. They know that there's a problem. They don't know what to do, and they might be frightened about talking to people. I think there's a lot of fear about talking about mental health. People are afraid of making it worse. So we're trying to take some of that away by helping people to understand how they can talk about these things and the kind of impact that it can have.
Taking away that stigma and making it more normalized. Is that what I'm hearing?
That as well, yeah. So we talk about the practicalities of how to have a conversation. So practical communication skills. We definitely talk about destigmatizing. So we talk about maybe if you have a team meeting, you dedicate part of the team meeting to talking about mental health and well-being. You make it a normal part of conversations. And we need leaders to have the courage, and it does take courage, to maybe talk about if they've ever had a struggle, because this then gives other people permission. If the leader is standing there sort of with a persona that I've got everything handled and I've never had a problem in my life, but they're expecting other people to talk about it, it's not setting the right tone. People aren't going to be safe. But if you say, you know what, say, for example, when my mother died, I had a real wobble. It was really difficult, and I got it through it by doing X, Y, or Z. So I really want the team to understand it's okay to have a tough time. We'll figure it out together, and we'll help you to get through it. The conversation then is completely different, and people feel much safer to talk about when they're having a hard time.
You're creating really psychologically healthy organizations where these things are just very normalized. And that's just a lovely thing. Melissa, we could talk about this all day because it's such an important subject. But I just want to say thank you for doing this work, and thank you for bringing the work to everyone here. I'm sure that there's lots of little bits and pieces that we could try and start having in our own organizations in terms of the conversation about well-being. It's very important. And thank you so much for coming on Learning Now TV today.
Thank you.
And now it's time for Learning News' Rob Clark. So he's reporting on how hiring across Europe has slowed. And we all know that, don't we, Kate? Not just Europe, across the US as well. And how talent acquisition is now under pressure, and how L&D salaries have shifted. So interesting stuff from Learning News. Thank you very much, Rob. We love listening to everything you say. Yeah.
Hiring volumes across Europe in many industries are down. Layoffs, restructuring and cost control hitting not just candidates but also internal recruitment teams. talent acquisition market analyst Sven Elber is here with the trends. What are the average salaries in learning and development? Nick Jones from recruiter Blue Eskimo is back with the answer. Susie Miller, founder of the accessible and inclusive learning content business Ella Hub, was awarded the Gold Learning Professional of the Year award and joins Learning News to discuss her work. Across Europe, hiring has shifted away from growth-driven urgency to defensive caution. Budgets are tighter, the use of external recruiters is reined in, and workforce planning has a shortened horizon.
It's been a year where talent acquisition has been under pressure. Again, we saw obviously more urgency in previous years around the growth cycles. That has probably completely collapsed. Instead, we've been seeing hiring freezes, restructurings, the planning horizon has shortened as well across most industries and across most of EMEA. It varies a bit by country. What makes this moment different is the double bind that TA teams now face. There's more noise, less signal, so candidates are mass applying. They're using AI while they sleep. The AI tailors their CVs to the latest 1,000 job applications they want to apply for. And then on the back end of that, you have 1,000 recruiters going through that one CV, which adds on top of all the others. So the recruiters are really drowning in high volume. That has been the sentiment all across the last research cycle. So that's obviously changing how talent acquisition teams are working. It's changing the role. It's shifting upstream, really. So less about sourcing and filling the funnel, but more about filtering and being smart about what gets added into the funnel. So talent acquisition teams need to think about, the hiring criteria even earlier before the job is posted. They need to qualify earlier and contribute also to the wider workforce strategy.
The annual work and salary report now provides average salaries for different job disciplines across learning and development. Consultants, managers, designers, deliverers, sales, technologists and senior leaders. Nick Jones from recruiter Blue Eskimo, the author of the report, has the data and is here to explain.
So these are median salaries, and we had a choice of looking at median or mean. Median was the best way of us being able to get a more accurate number. There are less outlying numbers to work with if we go with the median. Now, what we've done is we've taken the salary survey for this year, 500 plus respondents, plus we've taken an additional data set of all the vacancies that we've dealt with over the last 12-month period and taken the medians for those vacancies as well. So we've got a data set, 900 plus data points, that tells us what the median salaries are. Now, this is one page in the work and salary survey, and we've broken down the job roles into functional families. There is a lot of detail behind those families, and there's also a lot of job roles and job titles. So we've had to use some fuzzy analysis to batch those roles together. But I think, and we've tested the data, the medians that we have in each family are pretty accurate.
Nick, how is salary satisfaction? Last year it was down. What's happening this year?
So generally, salary satisfaction is something that is unique to the individual, and it depends on whether they are perhaps in the market looking at what other people are being paid as to how satisfied or dissatisfied they're likely to be. The trends we consistently see is around about half of all people surveyed feel that their salaries are about right, and that's generally the same year on year. The dissatisfaction level is on the increase. So we're seeing more people dissatisfied, only marginally, but we've seen an increase in dissatisfaction this year. We've also seen an increase in the number of people that are satisfied. They feel that their salaries are higher than average. And that could suggest that people are taking a look at the market and realizing that actually the grass isn't necessarily greener on the other side. That may simply be that generally in the open job market, salaries have been on the decline this year compared to the last 2 or 3 years of very high competition. So although it doesn't give us a definitive answer, it tells us that most people are generally happy with their salaries.
The Learning Professional of the Year is presented to an individual, employed or freelance, who has shown exceptional skills in learning and development, quality of delivery, and meeting business needs. The judges seek clear differentiators from other entrants, evidence of innovation and client endorsement, being a well-rounded individual and having sound subject matter expertise. They can be in a face-to-face or online environment. Quality of delivery and meeting client or employer needs is what is most important here. The 2025 Learning Professional of the Year is Susie Miller from Ella Hub.
My work focuses on making learning content accessible and inclusive. So I run, as you said, my own agency. I'm an entrepreneur. So that kind of started from nowhere, really. And over the last 5 years, it's really grown to be kind of a leading light, hopefully, in making the industry more aware, L&D more aware of just how important it is to make sure that all learning content is accessible. So that means that everybody can have equal access to it. So including people who have a whole range of different diverse needs. So quite a lot of people with disabilities, so people with hearing, vision, cognitive and motor access needs. So it's really focusing on making sure that everybody has an equitable and an equal experience to our learning content.
That's Learning News this July. Thank you, as always, to our programme sponsor, CLO 100. We appreciate its support. And thank you to all of my guests today, Sven Elbert, Nick Jones and Susie Miller. Coming up next month, we take a look at a new skills intelligence platform, which assesses skills in work in real time. For now, thank you for watching, and I'll hand you back to Kate and Nigel.
Next up, Rob Hubbard continues his series on sustainability. Such an important topic. I think one that gets lost sometimes in the AI conversation as well. If you look at what OpenAI are just about to spend with Oracle and the physical cost of that to the planet, super interesting. He's going to be talking to Natalie Ainsworth about carbon literacy, which is a great phrase and something I'm going to learn a lot more about. I'm looking forward to this, and how that helps HR and L&D drive sustainability by embedding climate action into culture, learning, and everyday decision making. I love that. I love the embedding of in the flow of work. So thank you, Rod. This is such an important topic.
With me today is Natalie Ainsworth, a sustainability and learning leader who's worked at Citi, KPMG and AstraZeneca. Now, Natalie, I know you're involved in carbon literacy training, so can you describe briefly what that covers and who it's aimed at, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me here. Carbon literacy at its core is about understanding the carbon costs and impacts of our everyday decision making. And so that means kind of like having both the knowledge and the motivation to take meaningful action. We need everyone engaged, right? So it doesn't come down to just those in a quote unquote sustainability role. To tackle climate change, we really need everyone on board. And these workshops are about equipping people to be part of that low carbon future, no matter what their role is or what their position in society is. I can work with organizations kind of more broadly, but I think the HR and L&D course I've developed is more relevant to kind of mention here, because I think it's important to understand that intersection of HR, L&D and sustainability and really contextualize the learning to the pivotal role that we really can play within an organization in this space. So it's not just about the climate science, it's about translating that climate knowledge to kind of really catalyze the action and think about how we can drive it through learning, through culture, through people strategy. And it's really it's relevant for anyone. So anyone, I mean, carbon literacy is relevant for everyone, but in the context of HR and L&D, the space I'm kind of working in is anyone within a HR context. So recruitment, reward, learning, people operations. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're in a people context, then it's relevant for you. And it's really, I guess, about kind of seeing it as a real powerful tool, not just for climate action, but for things like staff well-being, organizational effectiveness, kind of increasing organizational performance, improving retention. And it really connects sustainability directly to the people agenda. And as we're kind of like, as businesses like navigate that path of sustainability, it's the people agenda or the people is kind of an area that's often overlooked, and it's so critical, because without the people, we don't have sustainability. Like, sustainability just doesn't happen in a silo, and HR and L&D really are at that heart of that intersection, and can really play an important role.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I've certainly heard leading sustainability organizations say that we have the technologies, we have the solutions, and really the climate crisis, it's a communication project. That's what we need, is to engage people. Fantastic to hear. So, I mean, based on what you've just described to me, how do you see the kind of demand or the need for sustainability learning potentially changing?
It's a really good question. I think it's growing. It's definitely growing. And I think the increasing regulatory landscape is driving some of that pressure, but I'm not necessarily seeing it growing and being driven from the learning kind of strategy perspective. It's really interesting. I think we're still maybe seeing sustainability as owned by another function. And I think this is really more than just a missed opportunity. What I'm observing is there's sales teams, marketing teams, as well as sustainability professionals, obviously, noticing the need for internal capacity building and kind of that education, that awareness, that skills building for sustainability. And in a lot of cases, they're the ones kind of driving it. And I think we're really at this tipping point where employees want to understand their role, and they want to be involved in creating a more sustainable future. They want to have an impact in that, and they want to know how they can contribute. And organizations need to really start meeting that need with intentional, role-relevant learning and education around sustainability. But there are some organizations who are really forward-thinking in this space, and have integrated even sustainability and the people function under one leadership, which I think is like an incredible signal to the importance of it in the organization. Bupa is one of those organizations. They're featured on a podcast recently that I listened to, and they were talking about how they've really begun to deeply understand what the concerns of their people are in this space, because they're recognizing that as a healthcare organization, like health and environment are so intricately interlinked, and it's driving the message of their organization through their people as well. And so they're continuously educating their employees. They were talking about some of the things they're doing in that space, and they're actually also kind of really facilitating that employee-led action at all levels. So encouraging people to make suggestions of changes that can be supported by the sustainability strategy, essentially, to kind of reduce carbon emissions or reduce single-use plastics. And so I think what that kind of things like that really say to me is that the appetite is there, the business imperative is there. Like we understand that, we can see that, and it's the learning and the people strategies that really need to kind of catch up with that.
Yeah. You can see, Bupa have made that connection already because of what they do for a living, the healthcare, and linking to the environment and the planet around us. I mean, what about other organisations? So, do you see sustainability becoming more strategically important for all organisations, and kind of where are we on that adoption curve?
So that is another great question, and I think that, again, like referencing the regulatory space is driving some of that, but it isn't any longer a nice to have. I think, years prior, we had kind of corporate social responsibility teams, and those sorts of things were often viewed through the lens of nice to have, but sustainability is so much more than that, and it's really central to long-term business resilience and innovation, to profitability, and to even like talent attraction and talent retention. I know we've talked a little bit about this, but companies that are embedding sustainability into their kind of core strategies are already seeing returns in things like brand trust, investor confidence, and employee engagement. Like, investors are really looking at ESG measures, and even in the current kind of economic climate that we're seeing right now, people are voting with their wallets. I think I saw a stat the other day that about 80% of people would consider paying more for a sustainably made product. And if you think about the current economic situation that we're in at the moment, like, that's actually, it's quite powerful. There is that motivation there, and it's coming at different angles, right? We need businesses need investors and kind of that investor confidence in their brand, and they also need people buying their products, or the consumer, kind of the end client, essentially. But to really achieve these kind of, I guess, these are co-benefits of sustainability, really, because it is about doing the right thing for the planet, ultimately. Like, the planet is our home. We live in the environment. We can't see ourselves as separate from the environment. It is our home. But the co-benefits really have to, to achieve them, we have to see sustainability as more than just a report. It's more than just data. And we need to see it as showing up in how people think, how they're making decisions, and how they're acting every day. And that's really where kind of like we within that L&D space and within the broader like people function can play a really critical role. It's about shaping those mindsets and creating new behaviors to unlock those kind of critical outcomes for businesses. It isn't, we're missing the bigger picture if we're not thinking about sustainability in our skills conversations, because it doesn't really position us as truly future ready, I don't think, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, customers who are either dead or destitute, I think, have been proven to buy less products and services. So I'm pretty sure there's some studies out there on that. So, I mean, I love this idea of sustainability becoming just kind of baked into the fabric of the business. And, can you tell me how it might be used as a lens when businesses are trying to make decisions, or even when individuals in businesses are trying to make decisions? How can they use sustainability as a lens?
Yeah. And this is a really good question. And I think I think it's one of the biggest shifts that we can be making, and it's one of the most powerful ones. On a personal level, I make decisions on, if I'm traveling, do I take the lower carbon option? For me, it's usually yes. I will, even if it takes me much longer. I've taken things like 18-hour train rides, and I will explore like over getting an hour-long flight. Explore the other options. But in the business context and in the context of our roles, I think using it as a lens means we're not just asking things like, what's the ROI here? We also need to be thinking about what the long-term impact of something is beyond what we're trying to achieve. I think it's about thinking about that bigger picture of what are the co-benefits, or what are the things the trade-offs that we're potentially creating. And thinking about that in the context of the people within our organization, but also the people in the communities that we serve, on the planet, and on the future opportunity to keep creating value. We're not necessarily very good at thinking that far ahead. We're thinking about the outcome from an initiative or a project, right? We don't necessarily think in terms of several generations down the line, which is a type of thinking about these things. But even just thinking just a little bit in the future and what the actual unintended consequences of something can be. And I think we also need to not necessarily immediately think, can we do something? It's also, should we do should we do this? Is this something we should be doing? And if we do this, how can we achieve it as sustainably as possible? I think that it's about building that habit, like I say, of thinking more broadly, of understanding potentially who we might be leaving behind. And that's what sustainability leadership, I think, really looks like. I think if we think about things like the AI landscape right now, like there's so much opportunity and so much potential there. And there's also question marks around sustainability, but it's also thinking about who we're leaving behind in that context, right? Who do we need to bring on that journey with us? And we can think about green skills and a new gender gap that's forming there as well, because that's a sustainability lens. We're seeing gender gaps grow in green skills space, and things like our talent management processes need to understand these complexities to be able to really consider a true future readiness of our employees through that lens, and potentially think about it more broadly to the communities that we serve, the societies that we operate in. How are we leaving them better than we kind of arrived? We're not extracting more from them than we're giving back, essentially. And so thinking about it in that broader spectrum, asking a few key questions, I think can help us pause and just reconsider what that might look like.
Yeah, indeed. Regenerative business. But well, thank you so much, Natalie Ainsworth, for all of your thoughts and your insights today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's the end of the show, Kate. Another show done. What struck you? I think the AI conversation is quite important, and the fact that it's changing work, but work doesn't change very much, and people still keep it all moving. It's not technology, it's people. What did you feel?
It really struck a chord with me that, I mean, obviously, I'm working for an organization where we're in the thick of that AI revolution at the moment. Both in terms of, the product at Cornerstone, but also in terms of our internal ways of working. How do we harness these tools? And I think it's so interesting to see the efficiencies that you can gain, but also how it highlights some of the dysfunctions of existing people and structures. So obviously, you write and research around just workplace, and it's push and pull. I feel like there's sort of this tension at the moment, because I don't think people are ready to change as much as things are going to change, because we've had this conversation before, but those structures have been in place for like 100, 150 years in terms of how we're set up to work, the hierarchies, the processes. The tools have changed and evolved over the years, obviously beyond all recognition, but this is another change. Well, it's like a change like we've never seen before, right?
I think it requires a holistic view. It's no good just saying this is another technology to embed. This is pretty fundamentally creating the reason to basically rethink what work is, how we work, and what we mean by work, and how it fits into our lives. Because otherwise, everyone is going to just collapse. If AI is used to increase productivity, but we just do even more than we did before, then there's going to be a point of collapse, I think. And many organizations seem to be on the point of collapse because, as it gets more complex, it gets more closer to chaos. And a lot of us, when you get close to organizations, you realize there's quite a large chunk of the organization that doesn't really know what it's doing, which sounds very cruel, but it's true.
And I think more, like to your point around sort of productivity, more is not always good. I always think about this when I see some of these, AI-powered authoring tools. Like, does the world need more crap content, like learning content? No, like it really doesn't. Does it need more good learning content? I'd argue yes. And I think that the human in the loop there is really interesting, because you've got, instructional designers who spent years honing their craft. Can they put together something that's going to be better than something that, a subject matter expert can spit out on a tool? Arguably, yes. I would say, but at what cost? If it takes 6 months to produce something versus 6 minutes, what's the middle ground there? So, but more of the same is not what we need. And I think
I agree.
I think that rethinking it is challenging. And I see this when we talk about skills, because to become, I don't really like the term skills-based organization, but if you want to move in that direction, say, as a company, I think one of the hardest things about it is that it requires the unpicking of power structures and hierarchies to do it properly, because you start outsourcing or giving things to bots or whatever. You're unpicking those roles and unpicking those hierarchies. And I think AI offers the same challenge in terms of unpicking those power bases. And people don't want to let go of that power. Not at the moment. They're not ready to. So that we're rigidly sort of confined in these structures. And, does that, at some point, they're going to burst open, right? If I can sort of carry the analogy through, it's like a dam, I guess.
It is. I agree. I talked to someone the other night who was starting to use AI to write board papers. And he was saying that what would take him 3 days of really intense work to produce this board paper, he could do having conversations with ChatGPT. So literally the microphone on and saying, well, what about this? And what do you think of that? And no, that won't work. We need to basically having an engaged dialogue and producing a board paper in 2.5 hours. That the board said was way better than anything else he'd done. That's true. But the question is, that's great. But what about the time saved? Is that going to be, or just write 4 board papers now? You can do it in the same time. Or do you say, right, well, that's your board paper task done. Now time for reflection, maybe some work on the organization, maybe a chance to sit back and see what we could do better, et cetera, et cetera. But there doesn't seem to be any likelihood that we'll use those minutes in really productive, new kind of activities to make the organization more effective. It's kind of, we'll just do the same old, but more of it.
Yeah. Or they'll just, organizations will look at it as a way of getting rid of people. But I think it's always the so what for me. It's like when you do a piece of research and you get some numbers, you get some data at the end of it, great, 86% said this, blah, blah, whatever. So what? Well, yeah, and it's the same. I find it's the same with what AI will spit out. If you're doing something like a paper or a piece of research, it's like, great, but how do you then apply that to your problem? And that's where AI hasn't got to yet. I'm sure probably it will, but we're not there yet. And it's giving that guy that you just talked about that time to go, right, okay, I'm going to take this information now and use it to solve this problem, whatever, or this situation.
To go and think, to reflect, all these things that just don't exist in a day full of one meeting after another, particularly when they're online. It's exhausting and it's very unproductive. Anyway, this is a good, important conversation that I think will continue for a good while yet. And I don't think, sadly, we haven't come up with all the answers in this 3 or 4 minutes. We should have done, but we haven't.
I think we'd be doing quite well for ourselves if we had all the answers, Nigel. But
we may well be.
We're very lucky to have a ringside seat, front row seat to all of this change, and that's what we're trying to bring you with Learning Now TV. Basically, is that front row seat to that journey that we're all on. And talking of seats, there's some good events coming up that AI will be threaded throughout. I don't doubt.
Undoubtedly. Starting with Kate in September, what have we got?
So we've got our friends at the Learning Performance Institute are hosting Learning Live on the 17th and 18th of September. The Women in Learning Leadership will be represented there. So very excited for that as well. Serena and Prachi and some of our other founding members will be in situ for that. So very exciting.
Excellent. That's very exciting.
Yeah. And then Learning 2025 is happening on the 1st to 3rd of October in Orlando. Then there's the Learning Leaders Conference at the same time, which must be, I'm guessing, part of the same thing.
It's linked to it, yes.
Yes.
It's linked to it, yes.
Yeah.
They've kind of split
Then
themselves a bit.
World of Learning, the OG, is back on the 7th and 8th of October in Birmingham in the UK. And then my friends at Unleash are hosting Unleash World in Paris on the 21st to the 22nd of October. And the lineup looks really strong for that as well. So no days off. We'll still be back in August. So no summer holidays for us, Nigel.
21st of August, we'll be there, grinding away as always. Maybe that was an inappropriate verb to use, but we'll be working hard and we'll see everybody on the 21st of August. Thank you, Kate.
See you then. Thanks, Nigel.